Professor Young's The Evolution Theory from the Viewpoint of Christianity, the thorough analysis of the descent or origin of man. Lecture 17, Chapter 12, Secondary Sexual Characters of Fishes, Amphibians, and Reptiles. The males of many fishes fight for the possession of the females. Thus, the male stickleback has been described as mad with delight. When the female comes out of her hiding place and surveys the nest which he has made for her, he darts round her in every direction, then to his accumulated materials for the nest, then back again in an instant. And as she does not advance, he endeavors to push her with his snout, and then tries to pull her by the tail and side spin to the nest. The males are said to be polygamistous. They are extraordinarily bold and pugnacious, whilst the females are quite pacific. Their battles are at times desperate, for these puny combatants fasten tight on each other for several seconds, tumbling over and over again until their strength appears completely exhausted. With the rough-tailed stickleback, the males, whilst fighting, swimming round and round each other, biting and endeavoring to pierce each other with their raised lateral spins. The bite of these little furies is very severe. They also use lateral spines with such a fatal effect, so that he sank to the bottom and died. When a fish is conquered, his gallant bearing forsakes him, his gay colors fade away, and he hides his disgrace among his peaceful companions, but is for some time the constant object of his conqueror's persecution. Mr. Shaw saw a violent contest between two male salmon which lasted the whole day, and Mr. Buist informed me that he had often watched it from the bridge at Perth, the males driving away their rivals whilst the females were spawning. The males were constantly fighting and tearing each other on the spawning beds, and many so injure each other as to cause the death of members, many being seen swimming near the banks of the river in a state of exhaustion, and apparently in a dying state. And Mr. Buist informed me that in June 1868, the keeper of the Stormonfield breeding ponds visited the northern Tyne and found about 300 dead salmon, all of which, with one exception, were males, and he was convinced that they had lost their lives by fighting. The most curious point about the male salmon is that during the breeding season, besides a slight change in color, the lower jaw elongates at a cartilaginous projection turns upward from the point. In our salmon, this change of structure lasts only during the breeding season, but in the salmon of America, the change is permanent and best marked in the other males which have previously ascended the rivers. Here, a character proper to and primarily gained by the male appears to have been transmitted to the offspring of both sexes. In regard to size, Mr. Carnivore maintains that the females of almost all fishes is larger than the male. With Cypronodontus, the male is not even half as large. As in many kinds of fishes, the male habitually fight together. It is surprising that they have not generally become larger and stronger than the females through the effects of sexual selection. The males suffer from their small size. They are liable to be devoured by the females of their own species when carnivorous, and no doubt by other species. Increased size must be in some manner of more importance to the females than strength and size are to the males for fighting with other males, and this perhaps is to allow of the production of a vast number of ova. In many species, the male alone is ornamented with bright colors. Mr. Serville Kent remarks that this singular appendage appears from my observations of the species in confinement to be subservient to the same end as the wattles, crestus, and other abnormal adjuncts of the male in gallinaceous birds, for the purpose of fascinating their mates. The young males resemble the adult females in structure and color. The structures as yet referred to are permanent in the male after he has arrived at maturity, but with some blemish, and in another allied genus, a crest is developed on the head of the male only during the breeding season, and the body at the same time becomes more brightly colored. There can be little doubt that this crest serves as a temporary sexual ornament, for the female does not exhibit a trace of it. Mr. Kent says that the male of Raburus mixtus, which, as we have seen, differs in color from the female, makes a deep hollow in the sand of the tank, and then endeavors in the most possessive manner to induce a female of the same species to share it with him, swimming backwards and forwards between her and completed nest, and plainly exhibiting the greatest anxiety for her to follow. The males of Cantharus lineatus become, during the breeding season, of deep leaden black. They then retire from the shoal and excavate a hollow as a nest. Each male now mounts vigilant guard over his respective hollows, and vigorously attacks and drives away any other fish of the same sex towards his companions of the opposite sex. His conduct is far different. Many of the latter are now distended with spawn, and these he endeavors by all means in his powers to lure singly to his prepared hollow, and there to deposit the myriad ova with which they are laden, which he then protects and guards with the greatest care. Female fishes never willingly spawn except in the presence of the males. If the female exerts such a choice, all the above factors on the ornamentation of the males become at once intelligible by the aid of sexual selection. Under natural conditions, it does not seem probable that beings so highly organized as fishes, and which live under such complex relations, should become brilliantly colored without suffering some evil or receiving some benefit from so great a change, and consequently without the intervention of natural selection. What, then, are we to conclude in regard to the many fishes, both sexes of which are splendidly colored? At the present day, few Naturalists will admit that any animal has been made conspicuous as an aid to its own destruction. It is probable that certain fishes may have been rendered conspicuous in order to warn birds and beasts of prey that they were unpalatable. And we may conclude that with most fishes in which the sexes differ in color or in other ornamental characters, the males originally varied, with their variations transmitted to the same sex and accumulated through sexual selection by attracting or exciting the females. The details of amphibians and reptiles are in the next. Shalom.